I guess I'm live. Hello, hello. If you're joining, let me just quickly post this on Twitter as well. I hope the audio is all right. Let me know if it isn't. If you want to do me a favor, then retweet this tweet. Let me just paste it here. And let's just wait until a couple more people are here. And then I'm gonna get started. Let's put this up here. Hello, yes, video on demand is going to be available later. I always upload everything to my YouTube channel. I'm gonna quickly find out what my YouTube channel is, and then yeah, also going to post a link to my YouTube channel. Always going to be uploaded, and I don't do any fancy shit. I just upload the live streams as they are. Because I don't have time to to kind of like cut the videos or do something more professional. But yeah, it's just all natural the way it is. Okay. All right. Thanks for dropping by, and hope you enjoy the recording later then. So for everyone who's still here or just joining, thanks for being here. What I wanted to do today is look at a couple of repositories that people posted to me on Twitter, where I basically asked, like, if you want me to look at your React query source code that you have in an open source repository, I will do that, and I will do it on stream. So, but this is not about roasting someone's code or anything like that. I just want to get a better feeling of how React Query is used in the wild, and how what people are doing, and maybe give a bit of feedback here and there, and maybe even do an upgrade to version 5 for one repository or the other. We'll see about that. Apart from that, as you can see, hopefully see a little bit in the background image that I have here, I have been working very hard for the last couple of months on the new React Query course, which is going to come out later this year, or probably earlier next year, together with UI.dev. You can already, if you haven't done this already, go to query.gg and sign up for the newsletter to keep up to date. And I think it's pretty much the best content that I've ever created because I put so much work into this. So if you've enjoyed the content that I've been doing so far, then please go and subscribe to the newsletter, and maybe like get your boss to buy the course for you or something like that. Hey Arian, I think if you are Arian who's just posting, thank you very much. Arian is a co-maintainer of React Query, and he's been mostly maintaining the solid adapter. If that's you, I guess. I don't know any other Arians. Okay, then I guess I'm gonna get started. Let me, volume seems low. Okay, thanks for letting me know. I can make that a bit better, I guess. Let me just find the right settings. How's that? Is that better? Or maybe I just move the microphone a bit closer, and then it usually gets a bit better. Okay, cool. Thank you for letting me know. All right. Let's get started by, let me try to find, let me try to find the tweet that I sent. It's been some time. So where I said I'm going to review your code on live stream, and lots of people volunteered, so thank you for that. I already looked up a couple of those repositories, and I want to look at as many as possible as I can today. So let's do it with the first one that I looked up. Of course, if you have any questions in the chat, feel free to just ask them. Can be about React Query or anything else, version 5, whatever it is that you would like to know. Just happy to answer questions if you have them. Otherwise, I'm just going to go into the first repository, which is, I've prepared one, I haven't prepared many, so I just took one that I wanted to start with looking at, and this is one repository that already is on React Query version 5, so I picked this one because the maintainer of this app already decided to use version 5, so I want to give some thanks to that, because early adopters are always the ones that kind of help us maintainers a lot. So I want to give that back a little bit. So let's take a look at this app. I haven't really seen it before, apart from maybe expanding a little bit here and there. It uses PnPM. I already did do the installing so that like the TypeScript stuff and everything works. So there seem to be 2 packages, API and DB. I haven't run this project. Also, I don't think I want to run it. I just want to you know, look at the code and see how it flows and see if I understand it, right? So I don't really care if it works, or I also don't really care if the things that I change work, because usually when it TypeScript compiles correctly, then it also works out fine. So we're gonna go with that. So let me maybe start with making a search for React Query, and then we'll open this up here, and then we're gonna go one by one, maybe to see like all the usages. Even though it would be interesting to see maybe the entry point, so the query client provider, where we're going to see that, yeah, if there's something that's out of the ordinary, but I don't think so. Even using this repository even uses the React router package of TanStack, which is great. I haven't actually seen many integrations with the router from TanStack, so pretty exciting to see that. Okay. So what do we have here? We have a, let me just, the travel app, which one was that? So that I can maybe, yeah, this one here. Okay, let's just retweet that. Looking at this repo live now on Twitch. Okay. Let's do this, and then yeah, maybe another emoji. I like emojis. Okay. Is this the one that I'm looking at? Just to be sure. Travel app. Yeah, I guess that's the one. Okay, cool. All right. So there's that. Let's take a quick look at the, so we've already seen like the app. It has a query client provider. The query client declared in a separate file, declared outside of the app. That's kind of important for a client rendered app, that you don't create the, that you don't create the new query client like here inside. That would be a mistake, because if your app re-renders, you kind of throw away the cache. I think I've mentioned this a bunch of times, and I'm seeing this a lot. This is also in my frequently asked questions, that you really want to have a stable query client. But this looks fine here. And then there's the React Query DevTools. If you're not using the DevTools, you're doing it wrong. So please use the DevTools. Especially with version 5, we have new DevTools. Thank you to Ariane again, who mainly made the DevTools, and she rewrote them in solid.js. And then it's basically like became the agnostic DevTools. And then we basically have adapters in React and in Svelte and everything, and in Vue, to actually embed the same DevTools. We've got some great contributions already. We have a tab that also shows mutations in the DevTools. We have like inline editable data explorer, where you can change data on the fly in the DevTools. Some really amazing things going on with the DevTools, so I can really recommend using them. And whenever I see like an issue reproduction without the DevTools, like I feel totally lost. The first thing I do is like I need to see the DevTools before I can get anything going. So that's really cool. The second thing that I don't know if we have, but I hope we have, is the Eslint plugin from the TanStack, but I don't see it here. If it's not, we can probably quickly install it, because if you don't know, TanStack Query also has its own Eslint plugin. And let me quickly just find it. Yeah, so we have our own Eslint plugin query that I would really recommend everyone using, because it kind of like tries to help you with the most common gotchas that we get reported frequently, which for one is the exhaustive dependencies, which means that everything that you use in the use query function also should be declared as a dependency basically in the query key. So you get a descriptive error if you get that wrong, and it's one of the things that's relatively easy to get wrong. And like similar to the dependency linter of React itself, this lint rule can help you write code that works as you'd expect it to work. I can see we also have like a stable query client rule. I didn't know that. That's a new rule, or I forgot that we had that. I knew that we had some talks about that, but I thought it was too hard to get right. But apparently it's not. So this is basically what I said before. It enforces you to make a stable query client. So this thing is wrong in here, except if it's an async function, because in server components you can create a query client inside of it. But actually the linter also gives us that. So let me quickly try that out by installing the Eslint plugin in this repository. We have pnpm. Yeah, looks like it. So yeah, okay. Okay, where do we actually? Okay, that's a pnpm thing that doesn't want me to add it to the root. Let me just see where actually the pnpm dependencies should go. Probably in here. Yeah. So we probably need to add it to the package. So how does it work? I need to cd apps web, and then probably pnpm add. Yeah. Okay. That works. Why is that so many dependencies? Huh. Well, okay, Eslint brings in a bunch of things. Cool. Now we have it. And let me just see what's the way to enable it. It's a plugin. Okay, so let's take this and add it to the plugins, and this kind of like gives us the recommended rule set of TanStack Query. And then let me see, Eslint, probably need to restart it. Somehow you always need to restart everything with Eslint. And then let's see if that works. I guess it should. So if I do const query client equals new query client in here, will that actually error? I haven't tried this out, so I hope this errors, because that's what it should do. This one goes away. I need to restart Eslint again. How does this work? Let me do another lint error, like a var. I just want to see if that errors. Okay. That errors. And const, and then did I remove the import? I did not. Maybe it gets confused by that. Okay, let's comment that out for now. Now everything's red. Okay, that wasn't my intention. Huh. Seems that this doesn't work the way I wanted it to work, because that's what at least that's what the documentation says. Wait a second, where was this? Stable query client error. Yeah, I'm using the Eslint plugin myself, and I know that like the exhaustive dependencies rule works. And this is weird. Let me just try this again in like a new file, like this. So auto imports. Usually auto imports are always working. Okay, interesting. Yeah, lots of people are lost with Eslint setup. You're right. Let's do it in. No, I'm doing it here. I'm writing the import manually. This is super weird. Yeah. Okay. Copilot almost gets it right. At TanStack React Query, and then we have like a diff, whatever, nothing. Okay, now let me try another error that I think is const. Yeah, this one, like query key, and then. Sorry for screwing this up. I thought this was just a quick drive-by. I'll show you how cool this thing is, but now I'm curious as to why it doesn't work. So I gotta figure it out. Because I hate, if there's one thing I hate, then it's like not figuring out things. So, what's up here? Okay, so let's do const query equals use query and then query function, and then let's do promise.resolve 5. Is there no prettier in this repo, or do I don't have it set up. Wait a second, I can't write like this. Prettier, yeah. Why would prettier not be turned on? Because it's a new repo and I need to turn it on okay, that's better. But still, it doesn't error. And Chris just said I need to extend the recommended rules in the Eslint config. Yeah, probably. Maybe I should have just read the documentation first before I do random shit. Add the plugin to your plugin, then configure the rules you want. Oh, damn it. Make a note to myself, we need to reverse the order in the docs, because if you do the plugin, then you need to do the rules manually. But if you do the recommended config, I think you don't need the plugin. And when I read the documentation, I want to go, okay, I install it, and then I need to do this. And then I had it in the back of my head that I only need to do one thing, and then it just works. But the one thing is this extends. Damn it, and not this. So I want this. If you want to file a PR, then flip the order here, because that drives me crazy. Okay, cool. So Eslint, maybe it works after all. So we don't do the plugin, we do the extends. And then we extend this. And okay, this also doesn't auto. Oh, it's a CJS file. Okay, so my default prettier doesn't include CJS. Whatever. Okay, so now it should work. And then we have the TanStack Eslint plugin query recommended config, and then we restart Eslint. And then I hope that I'm getting some errors here. Yes, query client is not stable. It should either be extracted from the component or wrapped in reacted use state. Okay, and it even has a link to the blog post of my FAQs. That's pretty sweet. Right, and for the other one with the use query, it's like if you add if you do something like param that comes from here, and then you add you don't add param in here, but you use param inside the query function, then you will get an error that the following dependencies are missing. Exhaustive dependencies, you need to add the param, and then it's auto fixable and it adds the param for you. So I think this is like a really, really helpful thing when you're building queries as they go, because over time it becomes like really, really easy to add new things to the query function, but to forget to add them to the query key. So like you have something like you have like an API, and you have, I don't know, maybe you have filters, and you have sorting, and you have, I don't know, page and something like that, rather pagination, or you have like filters and sorting, and then you have filters and sorting inside here, but you actually add pagination later, and you add the page here, and you forget to add it to the query key. So that's kind of like you usually get it right when you set it up the first time, but then as it evolves, you might screw it up, or someone else. and this actually helps. Does this also work if you extract the query function? Yes, I think so, because if you extract the query function, so if we have like something like function fetch it, and then we have this takes like a param number, right? Whoops, I always do this. Okay, misclick. You have a param number, and then you kind of like you return like return promise.resolve param, and then you have fetch it, and then you basically you do fetch it param. This is pretty much the same thing. If we extract the, so if I remove the param from here, it's kind of like for the lint rule, it's the same thing. Whatever you use in here needs to go in here. If we're actually doing this, then we get a TypeScript error, because this function that gets a number as an input is not assignable to a query function, because a query function gets a query function context as an input. And the query function context, we can see this if we basically do fetch it, and we basically like destruct this here, we can see that this is kind of like an object that has a bunch of things. One of them is the signal, which is the abort signal that we provide so that you can pass it to fetch and basically do a query abort, query cancellation and abort queries in the on the network, and it gets meta and query key passed, and the query key is actually like the key that you have here. So and it's actually it's also type safe. So if you do this like as const, then the query key here is actually like the read-only repo data thing. So if you have like repo data and param here, and then you basically like access the query key now is, well, param is any obviously, but what if param were a number, right? So let's type our props correctly, then we don't have this problem. So now the query key is going to have a number in the second thing. So if we extract the query key out of here, then we can do something like a query key dot or query key access 1, and then it's a number, and we can invoke this function here. Otherwise, if we want to extract the function outside of it, and we just want to do fetch it, then what we need to do is we can't accept the number here. We would need to accept a like a context, and that is a query function context, and the query function context comes from React Query, and you would actually need to kind of like give it a type for the things that it's getting. So if you do this, it becomes a bit more complicated, and I'm usually a fan of like inlining it and only extracting the type of like what your fetch function takes, and not just and not making like a fetch function that actually gets the whole context passed, unless you build like a whole framework with query key factories and query function context around it, which I also have a blog post on. So I'm just gonna link that here real quickly. Whoops, actually I want to go to that page, and then there is leveraging the query function context. I think this actually even has a section on how to do it with TypeScript, and like get the type from the query function context from your query query key factory if you have one. So I'm just going to leave that here in case you want to have a read on that topic later. Okay, more questions. Is it better to use a single object with all the parameters combined, or pass each parameter as its own in the query key? That's a pretty good question, because the answer is that it mostly depends on what you want to build. And the only difference between, so the top level has to be an array. So you can't like do a single object at the top level, but what you can do is a single object afterwards. And this is also in the article that I linked. I think it's a neat trick, because if you do sort, or like let's just do param in here. If the second parameter is an object, so first of all, for the query key stability and serialization, it doesn't matter. So you can have param in there. There's you can have objects in there. You can have arrays in there, as long as it's JSON serializable. it doesn't really matter for React Query. But the thing is that arrays have an order and objects don't. So if you want things to have an order because there is a hierarchy and you want to invalidate everything repo data related, and then you want to, and then maybe you have like, I don't know, workspaces, and you want to have workspace and then the ID of the workspace, and then you kind of like, you build that hierarchy that your application state or your basically your server state forms. Then you can do that with arrays, because then you can say I can delete, I can invalidate everything related to the repo data with this, and or everything for this one workspace by passing repo data, workspace, and ID. And this is kind of like how the fuzzy matching works with React Query. But if you don't want to have that hierarchy because things are like cross-referencing each other, then you can also do an object. And the cool thing about the object is that now you have a hierarchy that goes both ways. So what you can do now is, if you invalidate everything that is repo data and ID, then it will target this thing. But if you do repo data and param, it will also work. It's a bit hard to explain, I guess. I think I have this in this article as well, where I said I went to basically, so we have scope and entity, and you can have like a scope that is to-dos. That's basically like the top level thing that I had with the repo data and the other thing as well. And then you have an entity that can be list or detail. So in the traditional approach, you would basically just do repo data and then list, right? Or maybe it's to-dos and list, and then you have to-dos and detail and all the other things. But if you actually structure it in an object, then you don't only have the hierarchy that you can say everything to-do related, but you can also say I want to target all list across all scopes. Like if I have a to-do list and a post list and a dashboard list or whatever, and if for some reason I want to target all the lists, then I can do this with this, because the fuzzy matching on objects works a bit differently than on arrays, because arrays have a strict order and objects don't. So there are some very powerful things that you can do with it, but mostly, especially when it's about dynamic parameters, sorting and filtering and stuff like that, it usually doesn't matter how you apply it to your keys. Okay, so many questions here. Let me quickly read up on that. What if I'm building the query key with a function query key factory from Sir Lucas? That's also a good question. The lint rule also works with that. Let's just build a quick function, and let's actually, because that's such a cool thing, let's use the new queryOptions API from version 5. No, I'm not getting auto import. There it is. Okay, so queryOptions is a new API in version 5, where that's basically at runtime it's just an identity function. But there are some magics going on type level that will allow us to basically define. It's more than just a query key. So the concept, if you've read about the concept of query key factories, then you know that we have, and this is like basically the other article that I have on this topic, and I actually want to write a new one. So what we have here with the concept of query key factories is that we basically have like an object that basically lists us all the potential keys for one specific feature. And this is a good approach, because it means you can then use them like this, and you will never have to worry about type errors, typos that you make, or wrong order of those things, and so on. And you kind of like gives you you don't have to type detail every time, because you have this kind of like a constant, like centralized in one place. But what it also does, and at the time when I wrote that kind of like recommendation, I wasn't really like super aware of that. But what it also does is it kind of like splits apart the query key and the query function. And if you know like the lint rule, the query key and the query function should actually always like they're a couple that they go together. The query key defines the dependencies for the query function. So why would you split them apart? And when I wrote the blog post about the React router integration, I think it was Alex who first I was just doing it because I was doing it at work. We've basically always had like factories that create the key and the function with it, because I didn't like splitting up the two, but I didn't really know that I've actually in my blog posts kind of like recommended the like only the key factories. And I thought that maybe, you know, people will come to the same conclusion anyways or whatever. But then I wrote this article about the integration with React Router. And what I did there was, this was mainly like a side effect of like how I wrote this thing, because we need to basically pass the same pair of query key and query function to fetch query in the loader of React Router, but also to use query. And what I did here is basically I was creating like this query definition where we basically have like a small query key factory, right? It's a query key factory with one entry. And then it also has the query function alongside it. And then what this gives us is the incredible flexibility to take all of this and basically pass it to fetch query, because for fetch query or for prefetching, you basically need like the pair anyways, right? If you've done prefetching on the server, you know that you need like the query key and the query function go together, and here it's kind of the same thing. And then we also want to pass the same thing to use query. So if we only have a factory that creates the key, then we kind of like need to define the query function separately from it again. And by combining those two, we actually get like a better abstraction, I think, where we basically define how a query should look like by defining the options of a query and not just the key. And you can take this even further and add more options to it, right? You can add stale time to this. Because passing stale time to fetch query is just as important as passing stale time to use query, because it will make sure that like the fetching or prefetching that you do imperatively will only happen unless the data that it finds in the cache is considered stale. So if you call like fetch query 5 times, or like if you have prefetch query and you hover over link, and every time you hover the link you basically prefetch, what happens is that if you don't pass a stale time to it, it will prefetch it every time when you hover it, right? But by passing a stale time to it, you kind of get that like caching behavior from React Query, where it says, okay, let's put this to 30 seconds, and if there's data in the cache that is not older than 30 seconds, then the prefetching will just not do nothing. You'll just say, okay, I have data already, I don't need to do anything. All right, and that to close the loop here, this kind of like got me to the next point that says, okay, if I define this here, like how do I make this type safe? Because the only way how this is type safe is actually because you pass it to use query. But by the time you define it up here, and actually I write most of these things in JavaScript, because getting the types right is probably too much for a small example anyways. But if we take this to our TypeScript thing here, and this is obviously just promise.resolve, and this is a number, right? So now you have like a cool contact detail query factory, and you can now actually go and take this and pass it to use query. Where is it? Here. So let's do whoop and then param. And then, that's not what I wanted. Sorry, I wanted this. I wanted to do like the whole thing. So here we do contact detail query of param, and then it actually works. And the question was, does it also work like in things like that? I think if we omit the ID from here, it will also error. Yes, because it looks for the specific value that's called query key. It's not tied to use query. So every time where you use something that's called query key, and then you have a query function alongside it, it actually gives you the error. So yes, this also works if you basically, like, for some reason, if we don't have the query function in here for some reason, right, then even if we did like this, I'm not sure if that works. Query function, and then let's not do it like this. Let's do a query key, because I think that works. And then you have contact details query param dot query key, and then query function is basically a promise dot resolve param. Now it works because we're passing the param here, but if we don't, then we're probably getting the same error here again. Yeah, so it kind of like it knows about all these situations, but okay, I'm gonna go back to where I was. Yeah, here. So now the ID is missing, so we put the ID in here. And the next problem that we have is that this, I mean, it's typed because it's TypeScript, but it's not really typed, right? So one thing that we are not getting typed is this here. Whoops. So, right, there's like no suggestions. There's nothing in here. Is it foo, right? And then I can ID plus foo. I don't know. It's like this is implicitly any now. There's nothing that gives you like a type inference for that thing, because it doesn't know where to infer it from. The only way how this query function context can be inferred is because use query has the typings, and here we have nothing, right? So we can't infer. You might say, okay, well, whatever, I can do like context and then query function context, and then like I can do like context.signal. All of this will kind of like work, right? Now the things are here and they're loosely typed because query key is now just a generic array of unknown because we don't know what's in there, blah, blah, blah. But that's not the only issue with this API. The other issue is that you don't know like what you can pass in here, right? There's no auto completion for this. And if you say I wanna pass in stale time 5000, everyone will be like, yeah, cool, stale time 5000, yeah, I pass it to use query, that works. But if you're following along, you're seeing that like stale time actually has a typo, because this is not the correct stale time. I mean, my editor tells me, but let's do foo time, right, or whatever. There is no, the way TypeScript works, there is no access property check on things that where you have like a function that returns an object and then you pass that object to another function call like we do with useQuery. TypeScript is structurally typed, so it doesn't check if the things you pass are actually semantically correct in this. It just says, okay, if you pass foo time here, then I just ignore it because, it's still like it has query key and query function. Those are required. I get those. Your foo time, you can basically, I don't care that you do that, right? And there's one exception to this, and this is basically inlining. So if I pass this inline object here to use query, then it will tell me that foo time, sorry, this arrow is a bit too long. That object may only know specific properties, and foo time does not exist in use query options. And it's like, okay, TypeScript basically says if you take an object and you inline it into a function call, you better make sure that you only pass the things that you need, right? But if you have like an indirection in there where you have like a function call and that function call returns something that's basically inferred to like it returns this in inferred type, it still structurally matches what you have to pass to use query. If we mistype the query key, then it obviously errors because query key is required, and then it says, well, you're passing me something that has nothing to do with what we want. So it worked with query key. It doesn't work with foo time or whatever. And Moshifan, hello, thanks for being here again with me. As already pointed it out, the query options has it. So if we now use the new API, query options, we will actually see that foo time is just like with use query, it gives you the same error. It doesn't really work. And also if you do stale time, so if we now do stale time, then it's actually the correct setting and it works. And we get back we also get like the correct inference again from here. Like this is again a string or number array because that's what the query key is. If we use const assertions here, then obviously it will get a bit better with context, detail, and number. And yeah, all of those magic inferences come back. So if I were to build a query key factory, I wouldn't necessarily build a query key factory again. I would build a query factory or a query options factory. Let me just see if I can find them. Where's the article? There it is. So if I go to like this one here, what I would do is probably I would have the to-do keys, and the all is probably going to stay the same. And then the lists it would be an object, and I would actually call query options on that, and then we would have query keys this as const, and then we would need a query function, and that would need to be like promise.resolve, what is this, a list. And then I hope I get the pretty right. Okay, so then I have like a list, and it basically gives me back the query options, and then I can say, oh, and I want to garbage collect this after 30 seconds, right? So I can put all this information that I want to put centrally on a query. Anyways, I would want to I can just put that here, right? And I can still compose these things on top of each other. So if I say I have a specific list, and it gets filters, and I want to build a key that looks like this, it gets a bit more verbose. I can see that already, but let me just quickly try to formulate this one example. So then we would do what we do. We would do query options, and we would want a query key, and that query key would probably be but not to-do key dot lists, to-do keys dot lists dot query key. So we need to get the query key from the one thing, because we only want to compose the query key, unless we also want to take the GZ time from there for some reason. Then we can also do that, right? So then we would basically could also like compose it then like this. So put everything up here, right? Then it would probably also take like the compose this option on top of it. But if you just want to compose the keys, what you can do is like do the list, and then filters goes in there, and then the query function is going to be like promise.resolve list with filters, and there goes basically the list with filters. And in here we should see that the query key basically, has our to-do or to-do list, and then the filters at the very end. So yeah, I think this is probably, unless you're using like a library like Zodios or a library like TRPC that does everything, that takes away all these things for you anyways. You can do it like that, and then compose these things as they go. And there's one more thing that I want to show that actually works really well. There's two more things I want to show. I get that I'm not really reviewing this this travel app, but I'm gonna get to it. It's just I'm excited about version 5, so I want to show off some of the cool things. One thing that you can do is, like, if you know that you can, if you do query client.get query data, and then you do like something like a query key, and the query key is basically something like this. Where query doesn't know what the data is. The data is always unknown. So if you've used TRPC, you know that they have this router definition, and they always know what are valid keys and what are valid values for these keys. Where React Query doesn't know, because there's no guarantee that context detail 1 is a valid key, or is this a valid key, like, because there is no upfront definition. There is only like an ad hoc definition of things. As soon as you call use query, that query key becomes like a valid query key. And we've always accepted this limitation and basically said, yeah, you have to pass a generic here, and then data is going to be number or undefined. If you people always say, yeah, this is the same as a type assertion. So if you do as number, you basically get the same safety, and that's true, except that if you use the generic annotation, we add the undefined for you, because at no point in time is it guaranteed that data is already in the cache. So yeah, that's where we add the undefined for you if you do that. Now, if we take another look at the query options, we can actually see that the context details query query key, because it was created with query options, and I'm like super proud of that we managed to do that. This query key could actually know that it's bound to this query function. And what we managed to do is that with query options, if you actually like return the query key here, if we look at context details query, I don't know if you can see this here in the type definition. Yeah, if we look at this in the context detail query, if we take a look at the query key is not just a query key, it's a query key of this value that is tagged with whatever the query function returns. So the query key knows the type of the query function from the time when it was created. If we change this to string, whoops, to make this a bit more maybe visible here, then what you get is that you have a string here as this value in here. So what that means is, if you in short, if you pass a query key into get query data that was created with query options, you know what's gonna happen. So we're gonna do param dot query key. You know what? It infers the type of data depending on what the query function has returned on type level. So if we change this to be number, then this is going to be number or undefined. I mean, this is some serious, as far as I'm concerned, I'm not the biggest TypeScript expert or wizard, but as far as I'm concerned, this is pretty big magic. And I think it's, yeah, it's amazing that we finally have that. Yeah, woohoo! I think it's the good kind of magic, right? It's a really proud of that. And the same works for set query data. So if we do query client.set query data, and then we pass in the query key, and then the second thing is a function, and that function gets like a previous data, then this should probably also be typed. Oops, you can't really see that. Yeah, this is also, let's put it here. This is also then typed to actually, like, it gets in the previous data for this. So yeah, this was kind of like a very late addition to version 5, where I thought this would be so cool to get working. And yeah, this is why I can wholeheartedly recommend to use the query options API. Yeah, let me quickly read up on the questions. I can see that you all like these APIs, so that's cool, because I love it as well. When was query options released? I'm asking because the next code mods need to take this into consideration. Yeah, the code mods were done before. Like, I think it would be too much to have a code mod actually invoke an additional function for you, because, you know, at runtime at least, let me open up React Query quickly. There it is. So if we take a look at the implementation of query options, it's really funny, because at runtime it doesn't really do anything. Like, this is what it does at runtime. So basically it takes in the options and returns you the options. Is if you're a JavaScript user, there's nothing that this function gives you. But then obviously there are a bunch of things, and a bunch of things that I don't understand, and a bunch of cool things that are really cool. Yeah, that kind of make all of this magic happen. Okay, did I miss any questions other than that? What's an example use case for get query data? Good question, because there aren't too many. Because you should actually never call get query data when you are like in a component, because get query data doesn't give you a subscription. It's an imperative lookup into the cache. It's like, if you're using Redux, it's the same as if you do like a store.getState, and then you have like the state, and then you find something in it. in Redux, you'd always want use selector because that creates the subscription and that will make sure your component re-renders correctly. Or like with Zustand, it's the same thing. With Zustand, you also have like get state, and you can imperatively access the state. But in a component, you'd want to have the declarative way and the re-rendering subscription that comes with it. And it's the same thing for a query. You always want use query, but get query data you want in those imperative situations. So, for example, what the simplest example is, for example, optimistic updates, or basically updates from mutation responses where you have like an on-success handler and then you want to call set query data to actually update the cache, and get query data in an optimistic update to actually read the data so that you can roll back to that state. But I agree that those APIs should be used sparingly. Yeah. Placeholder and initial data is also a good point, because with placeholder or initial data, what you can do is, as a simple example is, you have a list query, and that list query returns like 50 to-dos, and then you click on one of them and you go into the detail, and you'd want to actually not show a hard loading state, but you know already the title of the to-do and maybe part of the description because you have it in the list cache. You can actually look up data in the list cache and then take it over and basically display it for the detail entry if you find the right one, and display that. And otherwise, if it's not there, you use the normal undefined fallback. So yeah, the initial data function and the placeholder data function is also a good way to use those imperative APIs. Basically, whenever you are in a callback, right? Just don't use it in the render function directly. Okay, back to the code mods. If it's in the same scope, then it can be found via JS code shift in most of the cases. So if it's the recommended way, then that's the good news, because the next code mods can be smarter. Yes, definitely. Code mods are a hot topic, yeah, I'm very glad for the contributor Balash who made the code mods, and there are definitely room for improvements for the next time as well. Define query would be a great name for the API. Yeah, I went back and forth. Define query. I don't know why. I don't know if that actually came up when we named that. Yeah. Be that as it may, naming is hard, and going back on naming is even harder because people will hate you for changing names just because, unless you provide a code mod, then most people don't care. At least that's my experience. There was another thing I wanted to show with the queryOptions API. Yeah. So what you can do is, I think the last thing I want to show is you can pass it to use query. You can pass it to query client.fetch query. Because fetch query actually has like the same like API, because it also takes like a query key and everything. But what you can also do, and I didn't, and it's basically the same thing because TypeScript is structurally typed. The last thing you can do with it, you can pass it to invalidate query, because the new, and this is kind of like also a positive side effect of the fact that in V5 we have like the new unified object syntax. So if you do query client client.invalidate queries, previously you would just pass in a query key of some sorts. But with the new API, invalidate queries also wants you to basically pass in an object. And that object is the invalidate query filters. And filters are basically, query filters are an object where you have type and exact, and you have a predicate function maybe. And you also have a query key, and that is what the shorthand syntax or the alternative syntax of invalidate queries was actually using, which is like if you just pass in a query key, we would basically map it to an object that contained a query key internally in version 4. That's where you have all these overloads. Now you basically have to pass in an object anyway, and that object is a query key, And this is basically the most minimal thing that you need to pass. And conveniently, this matches structurally the syntax of contact detail query. So if we pass like invalidate query with the contact detail query, the access properties of query function and state time, basically they get ignored because TypeScript doesn't, or like JavaScript also doesn't care at runtime if you have something passed in an object that that's just superfluous in that situation. But yeah, even TypeScript doesn't care. It would care if we were to like pass in like a query function here, right? Because that would be like an access property, and on inline objects, TypeScript is more strict on that. But if we have this level of indirection from the queryOptions API, then TypeScript also doesn't care about that. Yeah, so those are all the things I had on that. Is there any question that I've missed? I feel like I saw a question. Question from Akurb. Who is the maintainer of Zodios? By the way, thank you for watching today. I saw that queryOptions did not error when providing a query function. Is that so? Yes, that is so, because the only mandatory property for everything is the query key. It's probably possible that we should change this in the future, but the reason for that is that even for use query, the only thing that you need to pass to it is a query key. Let's try this query key and then just something. This is a valid use query call where you don't have a query function, and of course this will error at runtime with no query function found or something. And the reason for that is that there is a pattern that's quite common. That's the default query function. And the default query function, if you have never worked with that, I'm also not personally working with that because I think it's a bit hard to get right with TypeScript. But the idea is that you can define a query function as a default option on your query client. And then that query function, basically, let's make this a bit bigger, that query function gets in the query key, as we've seen from this query function context. And you can basically define a base URL here, and then you say, okay, everything in my query key afterwards is basically just appended to that URL. And then if you have like an API or if you have like an app where everything goes to the same API, and you basically want your query key to be kind of like the URL identifier of it, then you can use this pattern. You don't need to pass like a real query function everywhere. You can just say my query key / posts, or my query key / posts post ID. Actually, I wouldn't do this in one string. I would still do this in like 2 elements in the array, and then join them with a / when building the URL. So then we have posts and then posts and post ID, if you know what I mean. But this basically allows you to, not pass a query function and use the default one that you have. So at runtime, we're pretty, or like also on top level, it's pretty relaxed on where the query function comes from. Like all the options that you define on the different levels get merged together, and it just matters that at the very end, a query function exists when you want to run them. But the only thing that's always required is the query key, because the query key actually also defines where we have to look up the default options. Would providing a query function to use query override the default query function or run them together? It just as with any other options, it would always override them. So we basically have, and I can show you this in it's in query client and then default query options. We basically have 3 layers of options that we merge together, and they're basically just like an object, and they are, as you can see, they're just like objects spread together, so everyone overrides the other one. And the most top level thing that you can do is you can define your default options, queries, and I'm just, for the sake of it, I'm going to use stale time. So here I'm going to like everything has a stale time of 1000. That's like the default for every query if you don't define anything else, right? This is basically spread on the first level of it. Then there is a second API that's not very well known, but I think it's a pretty cool API. You can do something like query client.set query defaults, and you can say for all my like to-do items, I want to have a stale time of 5000. Right, and then it basically says, okay, if I see something that fuzzily matches this query key, I'm going to apply a different stale time. And then the last one is basically like if we do to do 5, and then we do query key, and then stale time we pass in here like 10,000, then the thing on use query actually takes the highest precedence. So for this query, it would be a stale time of 10,000. For the let's do it like this, right? So that you can actually see it. So for this query, it would be a stale time of 10,000. For every other query that has the to do like a namespace in the query key, so to say, it would be 5,000, and for all others, it would be the normal default of 1,000. So these are kind of like the 3 layers of defaults that we merge together. Okay. Now let's revert these changes here, and let's try to really take a look at this app, and let's start with a search for React Query and see how they are using it in this application. So the first usage only has use query client. Okay, and they basically have a function where we have use callback, and we call invalidate queries, and we can see this is the new syntax, so it needs an object. And there we are, yeah, so here we have like a key that has the agent's string, and then it builds like search page and per page filters, and it gets this from a table, which is fine. So this is probably just some way to validate it. But given that there is no use query in here, let's try to see if this is the real use query. Yeah. So here we can already see like where I think a query key factory or something similar would probably pay off if we have this agents table like feature, and we can see that we use it here for invalidate queries. We use it here for use query, and that's probably it. We use it here for prefetch query again. Yeah, and there's even the query function that's probably here defined for the prefetching with the key, and then it's probably also defined for the use query here, and it's probably the same function api.agents. Yeah, so this is like a prime example of where I would be using options. And let's for the fun of it, let's make a new file that's called agent query.ts, and then let's copy over like this whole object from here. Ooh, it even has placeholder later, so let's see how that works. And then let's do export const agent query options, and then it's query options, and I'm going to put all of this in here if I get that right. And then I don't know why auto imports don't work. This usually works, but okay, I know the import is import query options from at TanStack React Query. And then we have query options, and now we are missing basically the search page and per page. So let's make this a function, right? And then it returns query options. And this function basically gets in a, and I would probably just get it as an, I would call it filters, and then it gets agent filters, and we do export type agent filters, and that would be search, I guess it's a string, page, I guess it's a number, and per page is probably also a number. And then we just put the filters in here. Agents filters. And then we do, oh, it's queries. Yeah, if I name it queries, then I'm confused because a query is a React query. Well, let's do agent query params, right? And then this is kind of like query params, and then we do it here. And now we should actually see the lint rule in place, I guess. Oh, the other way around. Huh. Now we can see the lint rule in place. Yeah, cool. Okay, so that works. And now we have agents query options, and we just go to the agents table, and we replace all of this with agents query options, and then we pass in what we had before, which is these three things. Oops. I just want to copy these three things. Is that not possible? Okay. Yeah. Okay. Global filter is string or undefined. Okay. Then we have to widen this type here. That's fine. And then we'll just have keep previous data here. Okay. Nice. And then we get the whole type of this out of here. That's good. We don't need the API from utils API because we have this encapsulated in here. And then let's quickly go to the other one. Yeah, invalidate queries. We can do the same thing. So we can do agents query options, and we pass in these three things. Nice. And then in here we have nothing, and here we also have nothing. Query. Let's query client. Where's the actual use? Where's the actual use query? Oh, it was like the search was for agents. Yeah. That is the new one. Query key. There's the prefetching, right? So here's prefetch query with the query key, and then the query function, which has the same thing. So let's do agent query options and put those in here, and then we can delete the rest. And there's a bracket missing. Yeah. Okay. So this is looking good. And I guess it still works because it still compiles. One of the advantages of this approach is that we don't need to like put the API like everywhere. If we change something in the query function, or in the query key, we do it in a centralized place. And I don't say that you have to do this in any case. Of course, if you're just starting out, then it's totally fine to inline use query. It's fine to inline query keys or whatever. And if you have like a good query options API, I think you might not even need like a custom hook. So if you have like now an export const use agents query, yeah, actually like this exactly. If it basically only becomes like an abstraction over use query plus the options, if you do nothing else in there, because everything is shared in the options already, then you might not even need a custom hook, right? It's fine to just call use query in the components, because the idea of the custom hooks is that they're resilient to change. So if you change something in the query key or the function, the usual abstraction was to create a custom hook, and that custom hook would then basically centralize all the logic around the query that you have. But now actually the centralized place of the logic is the options object. It's actually decoupled from from React. It's decoupled from being a hook. And then as long as the hook is just, I take the params and I forward it to use query with the options, I might not even start out with writing like a custom hook immediately. I can still do it. And if there are other hooks, like if there's a use effect for example, if there's an infinite query and I want to auto fetch the next page, or if there's some use memo calculations afterwards, sure, by all means create a custom hook. But I would really start with creating like the abstraction of the query options first before I start making a custom hook. And in this example, it works out pretty well, I think. I think there was one place that we missed. Let's search again for agents. And of course, if this is if you know you will only have like 3 queries in there and you don't want to set that up and centralize those things, that's totally fine. I just still think it's like a very small investment for a lot of headache that you can avoid later, because if the query keys are spread around, and maybe there are some that are like not connected to the query function, like we have for the invalidation here, then it might actually be like a very difficult thing to debug later on if you find that you have a typo, or if you find that you want to rename one of those parameters. Like there is absolutely no type safety on how this like key is built, and if you get that wrong in one place, then nobody will tell you, and refactoring also becomes quite difficult. So what I would do here as well is to basically take this part out and then do invalidate queries, and then let's do agent query options with this. And it's not really more code, it's just different code. And then here it basically now complains that search is missing. So search is actually, yeah, we can make it just optional here. That doesn't really matter. We can do this, and then it works because apparently we want to invalidate everything for page and per page that doesn't have it, that doesn't even have a search. So yeah, in this situation, the object actually comes in pretty handy. And if you make search optional, you could also put search like as a second parameter outside of it. But the object, or like here you could put like what you could do is you could do search page and per page, and then basically do something like page and per page. And if you notice search is the only optional thing, you put it kind of like behind, so that when you always pass page and per page and you invalidate this, and then the search kind of lives behind that. Yeah, but you don't need to do that. It's just one of the ideas. But the cool thing about centralizing this is that you can do that, right? You can restructure how your query key works. If you add like a customer ID and you want to, or an agent ID, right, and you have to put this here in front of everything, then you can do this with this approach. You can also do it if it's spread around the application, but we all know how hard those things are, and to refactor later. So the more you have centralized here, it's like a very minimal investment upfront, I would say. Okay. This is the new syntax for keep previous data, which is nice. So we're getting the previous data in here and just returning it, because we've changed how the API works. The query actually looks fine. I mean, most of these things here are really, really, like it uses TypeScript, it uses version 5. All of these things are really, really good. There's one thing I've seen, yeah, this one here with the invalidation. This is like a really, like a tiny nitpick on my part, but there is a reason why use mutation has callbacks on use mutation and callbacks on the actual mutate function. And the reason for that is that on actual the callbacks on use mutation, they always run, and the callbacks on mutate async and mutate are actually bound to the component lifecycle, or the lifecycle of the mutation observer. Yes, I'm just reading in the chat that you want a link to the travel app, so I'm going to give it to you real quickly. It's this one that we're reviewing at the moment. So what do I mean by that, right? So the one thing is that the callbacks on mutate async, the callbacks on use mutation, they always run, and they're basically meant for things that should always execute no matter what. And this is basically query invalidation, because if your mutation finishes, maybe your mutation takes 10 seconds to finish. If it finishes, afterwards you want to invalidate. There's no question about it. You always want to do that. But then there are other things that you probably don't want to do all the time. And those are component-specific things. And the navigate here is a pretty good example of something that you probably don't want to always do. Because what this will do is, at the moment where you call mutate async, you actually, what I want to say, yeah, at the moment you call mutate async, you fire off the mutation, right? And if this takes some time, maybe it takes 2 seconds, 5 seconds, 10 seconds, if the user decides to navigate away to a different page in the meantime, like maybe they go away from this agents table, maybe they go to the hotels view, right? And then they look at the hotels. And then all of a sudden, 10 seconds later, they get a toast message saying agent point created successfully. That might be nice to see, oh, okay, actually what I did before that worked. The invalidation always works. This set open false does nothing because the component doesn't exist anymore. And I think in React 17, this used to be a memory leak something error where they spammed your console, set state on an unmounted component where everybody used refs as workarounds. Anyways, this doesn't exist anymore, so it doesn't matter. So this set open you can do, but still, like, logically, it's more tied to the component lifecycle than to the lifecycle of the mutation itself. And then this navigate is actually, I would say, a bit dangerous because if I, as a user, click on create something, it takes some time, I navigate back to the hotels list or whatever, and then I'm in there, and all of a sudden, it navigates me to the agent list. I'm probably like surprised because all of a sudden the navigation happens that I didn't anticipate to happen. So what I would do is I would take this navigate and basically just put it onto the other callback that we have, because that callback only runs when the component is still mounted, when the mutation observer is still mounted at the time when the mutation finishes. And I think that's a pretty cool distinction on the callbacks of mutate and mutate async. Actually, I don't know why we're using mutate async, because mutate async returns a promise, and let me just see if we're using that. So there's onSubmit, and then onSubmit is the form, and it doesn't want us to return anything. So what I would do, but that's also just like, this doesn't need to be async. We don't need to await that. It should be mutate. Rule of thumb, always prefer mutate over mutate async unless you actually need the promise returned, because mutate async gives you back a promise, and then mutate async will reject the promise, and unless you try catch around it, you run the risk of getting a unhandled promise rejection. And yes, the toast example is a very good one. So if you have async toast, I think React Hot Toast supports that. You can pass the mutation promise to the promise toast, and then you will see like the toast comes up immediately. It will show a spinner until the toast is until the mutation is finished, and then it goes into success or error state. That's actually a pretty good call out there. Where something, but I think that the rule of thumb still applies. I said that if you need the promise, then you should use mutate async. If you don't need the promise, don't use mutate async. And if you want to pass the promise to somewhere else, like the toast.promise function, then obviously you need the promise. So what I would do here is the toast.success. Does it have toast.promise? It does. Oh, we could try that. Cool. Is this React Hot Toast? It is React Hot Toast. See, there's all my favorite libraries and Zod and everything. All my favorite libraries in this open source repo. That's great. Cool. So let's see. We have toast.success. We have invalid. So this stays here, and then this set open and then navigate. We just take it out and we put it onto the on success handler of here. Now, and the fact that we have an onSuccess callback on the mutate function is actually the reason why mutate can only take one parameter. Like I can't remember how often I had to answer the question, why can't I do like mutate with multiple values? Why does it have to be like one parameter? Well, the reason is that the second parameter is already taken, and it's the one where we have an object for the callbacks. So if we take a look at, where are the typings? There, use mutation, it returns a mutation result, and the use mutation results, base result, mutate, lots of types, right? And there somewhere it must say that it takes the parameters of the mutate function. Where am I now? Mutate function. Oh, that comes from here. Oh, come on, there's so many levels of indirection. Who writes that? Okay, so there it is. Variables is the first one, and then options is the second one. And in these mutate options, we actually only have these 3 callbacks, and those are the additional callbacks that can run on mutate. And that's pretty much how I would refactor this, to just move those things to the other callback, to kind of like decouple this a little bit. Okay. Questions? Cool. If I define onSuccess on both use mutation and the mutate function, do both of them run? If so, in what order? Yes, they both run. And what runs first is the one on use mutation, because the one on use mutation not only runs first, the one on use mutation also allows you to return a promise. I don't know if we can dig into the types again, or you can just trust me on that. TypeScript will tell us. Because what you can do with the callbacks on use mutation is that you can keep your mutation in a running state for as long as the onSuccess and onError callbacks haven't finished. So we not only, like, the mutation basically is in a running state, in a pending state for as long as the mutation function runs, but we basically extend this promise chain by all the callbacks that are here. So if I return the promise from invalidate queries, because that also returns a promise, I can keep my mutation in a basically running state for as long as the mutation plus the invalidation takes. So if my mutation takes 2 seconds, like let's say I have a dialog, right? And I want to automatically close the dialog, or maybe redirect the user back away somewhere. But let's say I have a dialog and I have the list in the background, and I want to only close the dialog as soon as the list actually updated, right? What I can do is I can run the mutation like this. I can return the promise from invalidate queries, and then when the mutation basically goes into onSettled, I can actually do that because onSettled runs after onSuccess. So we are awaiting those promises internally, and you would basically kind of have like this this lever of things. If I basically do this, like I just run invalidate queries without awaiting the promise, then it still runs in the background, but nobody waits for it, and we would basically redirect the user before the list has finished fetching, potentially. That's also fine if you want to do it as fast as possible, then don't await the promise. If you want to invalidate and basically like want to wait until it's finished, then we need to return the promise. And this is actually what you need to do if you're using the new optimistic updates in version 5, where you're basically only rendering the query in the UI. So we have this example here where you have like a mutation that does an axios.post. Make this a bit smaller here. That doesn't really help. Okay, where you do an axios.post, and then we have an onSettled where we actually have to return the promise from invalidate queries, and we need to return the promise because we are rendering the variables that get returned from the mutation for as long as the mutation is pending. And if we write an optimistic update like that, and we wouldn't await the invalidation, then this rendering block would basically disappear, but it would only reappear after the invalidation is finished. So to avoid these kind of flickering UI, we actually have to return the promise from invalidated queries here. And that actually makes optimistic updates in version 5 like a breeze to work with, because that's all you need. Like there is no like writing to the cache and all of that. And by the way, if you enjoy this content, I am going very deep into all of these topics in my course. Yes, sorry, I have to mention my course from time to time because I spend a lot of time doing it. And if you want to do me a favor, sign up for the waiting list. We have like a lot of content. I think it's over 30 lessons, 30 something lessons, where I've put a lot of effort into explaining really how React Query works under the hood. We are rebuilding some fundamentals together. We are learning about all the things that I'm explaining now. So if you like all of these explanations, like these little things, like, oh, this return actually does like a lot of things. These are things that need a bit of explanation. And yeah, I'm going into a lot of detail into all of this in the course. So yeah, I think it's really good content. Okay, any more questions? Is the mutation key really needed, and what for? Yeah, the mutation key is something that brings me back to what I said before. You can, same as you do query client.set query defaults, you can do query client.set mutation defaults, and then you basically provide a mutation key for like my mutation, and then you provide some defaults like, I don't know, what do we have here? Not that much. Yeah, we can do retry 2, so we can do retries on some mutations, and then all mutations that get this mutation key basically have retries and others don't. They're not as important as the query keys, obviously, because they're mainly used for this. But the other thing that you can use them for is to basically filter things down to specific mutations with other hooks. So what you can, we have this use is mutating hook, where you can find out if a mutation is running. So with like, here, what you're getting back is like I need to import that. I don't know what the auto inputs don't work here. It's pissing me off. You get back a number, and it gives you back the number of all the running mutations. But if you basically like filter this down with a query key, then you only get like the it's mutation key in here. Then you basically like get it filtered down to only the mutations with that key. So for certain situations, you can tag the mutations with a key, and there is a new hook in version 5 that's also for the optimistic updates, mostly for the optimistic updates, but can also be used for other things, which is use mutation state. So with the use mutation state, you basically can get access to the whole state of all mutations that have ever run, right? So all the mutations that are in the mutation cache, and our dev tools also make it like super visible now with the mutations tab, which mutations have run or are currently running. So you can basically use the mutation key as an additional filter. That's mainly what it does. So you have like this add to do mutation, and you say, okay, I want to filter it down, and I only want the pending ones. And if you basically like fire add to do 5 times in a row, you actually get back 5 mutations. And because 5 mutations are running at the same time, and they are all like in the cache, and you can get back the variables of all of those 5 mutations, and then you can basically render them in the UI. So with this approach, you can also make like concurrent optimistic updates, which is kind of like a very advanced topic, but you can make them work with that.